Hello from a very sunny Sheriffmuir. And this plaque says, on this moor in 13 November 1715, a Jacobite army largely composed of Highlanders and the command of the Earl of Mar met a Hanoverian army consisting mainly of British regular soldiers under the Duke of Argyll at what has become known as the Battle of Sheriffmuir. The result was indecisive, but Mar's failure to take advantage of Argyll's weakened position in the closing stage of the conflict and subsequent withdrawal from the field contributed to the failure of the rising, known as the 15, in favour of the restoration of the exiled King James VII, the Old Chevalier, erected by the 1745 Association. Whilst that's certainly true, it doesn't take into some of the picture who was King James, and we certainly at this point have him as the old pretender. And yes, the army under Argyll was British, but also largely Scottish. And this larger monument to the clan Grey is much more impressive here. But walk with me as we walk some of this route up and onto the battlefield. Now what's really interesting is this road here is battlefield, and my opinion, the closing stages not far along there, but there's a lot more to it, a lot more to it. So how do we get to 1715? We're 30 years before the famous 45, which ends up at Culloden. And what's nice is there is an information panel here with some pieces of the battlefield and some numbers there. You might recognise some names: Strathmore, Ogilvie, and accounts of the battle. There's two routes around the battlefield. We're going to take this one up to the Gathering Stone. And yes, so how did we get here? So in 1688, we got William on the throne, William of Orange, coming in to take over from King James, largely because he was Catholic. It's not to beat around the bush. I'm going to massively oversimplify some of this area, but it is largely because he's Catholic. His daughter, Mary, is Protestant and is married to a very senior Protestant aristocrat and general, William of Orange. And so he's invited to come over and what's sometimes called the Glorious Revolution, depending on which side of this loyalty you sit, and takes over. There are then huge Williamite wars, especially in Ireland, where the Catholic Protestant divide is more furiously held. But that's not to say that really divided by this. There was a uprising in 1689, which fought at the Battle of Killiecrankie, campaign over towards Aberdeenshire, and then the Battle of Dunkeld, which really saw the end of it, even though that was not a huge scale battle. About 600 for the government Williamites, and about 3,000 at Dunkeld for the Highland Jacobites. But the government Williamite forces still hold out. So then in 1706 and 1707 we have the Treaty of Union, which becomes the Act of Union, and we then merge the rest of Great Britain with Scotland, and that's assumed in under Anne, Mary's younger sister. So that really starts to kick things off again for the old Jacobite cause, for James, Jacob, and Latin of is Jacobus, which becomes Jacobite. It's not as clear cut as Catholic versus Protestants. There are people certainly out to get their own advantage. There is certainly a religious divide to it, and there is, not forgetting, clan loyalty. And one of the big advantages of that is the Earl of Mar. And when Mar comes in, he is actually loyal to the current Hanoverian crown. And because of that, he puts his allegiance down to London, to Westminster, and he is rejected. Even though he says he could bring about 16,000 men under his old clans, he's rejected, and he heads north via Newcastle, rebellion on his mind. The Jacobites have not gone completely quiet since 1689, and there's still a lot of them from London to Edinburgh and to the Highlands in certain different clubs. And what you have is a resurgence, and they may able to bring together a relatively large army under Mar. Now, Mar is not a skilled general. What he is, though, is a clan chief, and is able to bring together quite a lot of warriors. He brings in even more because he threatens to burn homes. Like I say, the clan system is somewhat romanticised, and the clan system is certainly not perfect. By the way, what we've got here is there's another set of lifting stones. I can tell you the size of these compared to my boot. I'm not going to give it a go because I've got a rusty attached to one foot. And those are strength stones, very traditional. You'll see them at Highland Games these days, normally concrete. People will try to get underneath them and lift them to prove their strength. When you think that weapons are banned or even just very expensive to come by, it's a way of showing their manhood off. So, Mar raises his standard at Braemar in the Highlands, not far from what's now the royal home of Balmoral. And there's a beautiful castle there, and he's just outside the village, and he raised his standard for the Jacobite cause. One of his big things is he is against kind of the over-union of the two parliaments. Now that isn't, he then goes off of that as that being his cause. Now that was not originally his main cause, and it certainly was not the main reason that all the Jacobites are fighting. So this is not Scotland separatist, but Mar's cause is kind of Scotland separatism. There are certainly those who realise that if James had come to the throne, this is really important, James had come to the throne, he would just be a different king, a different British king on the throne. So this is not down to independence. What this really is down to dynastic battles. A whole series of events that go on and lead to a both English and Scottish Jacobite army, and to say it's pure separatism, marching down to the northwestern town in England of Preston, a small city. And their commanders are quite lackadaisical, and though they actually have good numbers, the British government army is able to force its way into Preston and force a surrender. They try to seek terms, the Jacobites, but by that point it's too late, and they say that there's no negotiation with rebels, so they're captured. Mar is up here. We're just south of the geographic Highlands, but you can see how beautiful it is around here. And in Mar's numbers, he's got about 16,000 men. Now he's left quite a lot of different garrisons, so by the time he reaches here, he's outnumbering his opponent, who is the chief of Clan Campbell, the Duke of Argyll, and he's got a lot of Scottish and English soldiers, so British, and he's advancing from Dunblane, which is a small town over that way, and they take up positions around about where we are now. The Jacobite army is actually lower down towards the Allan Waters, which is down there. Now there's a couple of different dispositions, but they advance, we know from the Allan Waters, where they've been camped, in two, splitting into four columns. Now this is a good path I'm on, but you can see what it would have been like just off to the side. The heather, the gorse, and these are known as blaeberries, like a wild blueberry. Very tasty, to be honest. Used to jams and gins and all sorts. But you can get an idea from this gorse how difficult it would have been. So they advance towards this area. Now there are three official dispositions of the two armies, all running very helpfully in different directions. However, I think it's roughly safe to say that Coppice Trees is the middle of the first battlefield. As the Allan Water is in that position, down there, and then moving around to the left, Dunblane's down there. So the two armies would have met roughly in the middle here. And what you have is really undulating ground, really difficult to move over. Now, Campbell's army, Argyll's army, different titles. He's the British government side, has the minority of forces, has probably deployed his cannon. There's very few records of cannon unless towards the end of the battle, but he also has a large number of dragoons, cavalry, and they are deployed, I would say, not far from that tree line, facing towards what is largely a Highlander army over there. And the opening charge takes place before the Jacobite army is fully deployed. So they advance on their government left and the Highlander right first, because that's closest to where they advance from. And so they advance towards this area. As they advance in, their commander is killed and a chant goes up, no mercy basically, mourning tomorrow, revenge today. The reason for which is many of them are survivors from Glencoe and the Glencoe massacre, and facing them as the commander of Campbell, and it was the Campbells that took part in the Glencoe massacre. And so they charge in and smash, I believe, not far from this direction, as there's 3 official dispositions for this, so it makes it very difficult. But they smash in and start to turn the British government left. And why do we not really know where it is? Well, this is one of the few markers we've got on a very open moor. This is the gathering stone we have here, gathering stone in the middle of Sheriffmuir, and you can see there's a plaque there. It's almost legible that it was moved in 1990, and this cage was put over the top of it, but it was largely damaged by roadmen, workers. So as the Highland charge smashes in on the left in this area, they haven't actually deployed their right flank over in that direction. So what happens is Argyle's able to push his dragoons forwards and smash them forwards. And what we have is basically a turntable battle, and the battle pivots with both sides losing their left. So if we take just down there, being the disadvantage to the government and advantage to the Jacobites, they have on this angle the advantage to the government and the disadvantage to the Jacobites, and the battle turns. What then happens is Argyle's got a reduction in numbers because of the subtlety in the ground. He's not able to see this, and so he ends up back down where we started. He kind of puts everybody together behind some mud walls for a small enclosure, deploys his cannons and his dragoons, and holds there. Meanwhile, some of his commanders ride into Dunblane saying that they've had a defeat, whilst some of the Jacobites on this side run back in Stirling direction saying they've got a defeat. And actually they're being ridden down by dragoons in chase as they go, and coming up from Broomhill, which is well over those tall hills over there, is probably, we think, this is where it gets difficult, but we think it's Rob Roy McGregor. Very romanticised version of Rob Roy with Liam Neeson film. But actually he was a bit of a bandit, and he was begged to come, and he fights here and he fights at the Battle of Glenshiel later in 1719. So he was famous at the time, certainly. He brings his Highlanders and they cover the retreat, but he refuses to get involved in the fighting. So therefore Argyle's armies kind of defeated but not beaten to that conclusive element, and some of the Jacobites are defeated. So you have a battle of 2 halves that's taking place, and both sides actually claim victory and loss. But certainly what does happen, I just wander on towards these woods, is that they say for James, King James in exile, to not come. But that letter doesn't reach him, or he ignores it, and he lands anyway in Peterhead in northeast Scotland. He goes down to Perth in that direction. He takes place Thanksgiving service, but because it's Protestant, he doesn't attend. Way to get people on your side there, James. And eventually, because this battle here at Sheriffmuir has not been decisive, he actually ends up retreating out through the port of Montrose, near where I live on the east coast of Scotland, and he withdraws back to France, not to set foot in Britain again. So Battle of Sheriffmuir becomes quite indecisive. You can see just how difficult the ground would have been as the battle wheels on its 2 different angles. But we're going to go get some shade. It's very hot today, and I'll tell the story again in a different way. Thanks for people joining. Really nice to do a little live video in battlefields that are near me in Bonnie, Scotland. I'll just take rest in the shade. So really thank you for people joining in. If you don't follow already, I have to say, follow, like, subscribe, really does help. But and if anyone's got any questions, happy to answer some of those things. So thank you very much, everyone. And this is Sheriffmuir.